Hi, and welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. I am your host, Jess Dewell of Red Direction. Today's program, Leaders Who Create Productive Teams, came out of a whole bunch of conversations, and this particular question is going to come up again in another program under a different title with different people in the panel. The reason is it is an incredibly important topic. It makes us think about what we're doing, what we're not doing, and really step out of our own perspective to go and get and seek and learn from another perspective. Because as soon as we can do that, our world doubles at least. And then let's say we get that second. So if I'm a manager and all of a sudden I can put myself in the shoes of the people that I manage and the trials and tribulations and successes that they are experiencing, I have twice as much perspective. Or actually double, let's square it. Let's call it squared. And then I'm also a manager, which means there's somebody that I report to. And what if I could take time and get perspective for that person? Now I have a third perspective. Now I've gone to the third power. So with all this perspective we have, squared and cubed and quadrupled and whatever it is, it's what we bring to creating productive teams. Now I asked this question of today's panel: what traits bring leaders their first follower? And what makes that first connection so important? Big loaded question. And I'm going to introduce you to Jimmy and Bob right now. Jimmy Goddard is a dynamic, innovative, entrepreneurial, and visionary IT program leader. He's accomplished at strategic planning, process improvements, and re-engineering. He works at Bank of America as a senior service delivery manager. Bob Willard is the owner and creator of Business Savvy Savant, to share his 20 plus years of experience working at every level of management. Today, he works with managers and leaders to help them succeed with their career goals, both as a coach and a business mentor. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
All right, Bob, I want to know, what traits bring leaders their first follower, and what makes that relationship so important?
Well, to me, it's all about honest dialogue, transparency. I think it's important to kind of outline what your goals are up front, and in doing that, it allows you to kind of have the means to an end in mind, so to speak. And then hopefully it allows your people to understand the direction that you're going in, which then allows everybody to kind of row in the same direction. I find many times with the businesses that I'm working with that when I first sit down and talk to people individually, unfortunately you get several different answers as to, what the goals are. And to be able to have your leadership communicate exactly what is the top priorities, what the goal is, both short-term and long-term, allows everybody to kind of get behind that directive and get the company moving in the right direction. Why that relationship's so important to get that first follower is, there's always that separation of, boss, employee, and that relationship always creates kind of a separation where if you can get somebody among the employees who see the vision and can get behind the vision, I find more times than not that you're going to move the company forward much quicker, because you're going to have somebody out there who's going to actually be railing on your behalf. And that's not a boss, that's a peer, that's somebody, among the other employees. In doing that, it's going to be a lot easier for you to accomplish the things you want to accomplish versus just having the boss giving directives if you can get buy-in, to me, that's the ultimate goal.
Thank you. Hey, Jimmy, I want to know what traits bring leaders their first follower and what makes that relationship so important?
Well, thank you, Jessica, for this opportunity to share my insight on such an important topic. If I were to draw a Venn diagram between leadership and followership, the middle section will be likability. Likability will be the common denominator there. And there are a lot of factors that yield to the likability. Now, in our today's environment, business environment, we all want people to be leaders. We are talking about from the CEO to the frontline employee. Anybody in our organization really can be leaders. In fact, we want everybody to think like a CEO. And my experience with our chapter with the Project Management Institute, it was something that emphasized a lot. And the CEO, I'm not referring to the position, to the title, but to the acronym that they have to do things with care, they have to do things with excellence, and then they have to operationalize what they are doing. However, we would all agree, although anyone can lead, but not everyone can be a leader. We demand for our leaders to be alert, to be agile, to be enterprising, and we want them to be skilled in the art of diplomacy. And it is really important as a leader to articulate who you are, what you stand for, and why you are excited to lead your team. Such excitement usually brings fruit when it comes from passion about a particular vision that will attract the followers. This is the first, in my experience, where the followers will like where the leader wants to take the organization. The follower will like the vision of such leader, and that creates that connection. And sometimes it is an emotional connection. But in our understandable effort to understand and to master the skill of leadership, one thing I would like to highlight, I have experienced we tend to lose sight of the fact that there are two parts of the leadership equation, just like I said it earlier with the Venn diagram. For leaders to lead, they not only need to have exceptional talent, they need to lead from their values and also create that vision for the future. It is very important. Now, the problem is we tend to forget about followers. We tend to look at followers in large terms of their leaders' qualities. In other words, we look at followers merely as responding to a leader's charisma or caring attitude. What we seem to ignore is that followers have their own identity. I have experienced followers are as powerfully driven to follow a leader as leaders are to lead. This is what we call the power of transference, where people transfer experiences and emotions from their past relationship onto the present. So a follower may idealize a leader for no particular reason of the leader's ability to lead. So you have that emotional experience that bond them together from the follower past experiences, and the leader is not even aware of it. And what makes that first connection important is, again, likability. So from the leader perspective, you must know why you are leading. You must have what I call the SAT of leadership. That means the essence for self-awareness. Know the impact of what you say and do onto your followers. It's also authenticity for the A, knowing who you are. For the people who follow you, not to be surprised by your behaviors depending on the issues that they are facing. And last, there's that trust element. They need to be able to trust you that you will have their back in any circumstances, that you are here to support them. Now, from the follower's perspective, there is the rational and the irrational aspect. The rational aspect that maintain that connection is many people follow leaders because of the promotion, because of their objective. Sometimes they follow the leader because they want to support the leader. Sometimes they want to follow a leader, maintain that connection because they want to get somewhere. And that leader is that conduit that will take them from point A to point B. in their career or any other endeavors. And then you have the irrational aspect. It is the transference that could be positive, where they see in that leader somebody either like a father or a mother figure. So they will do anything that they can to make sure that leader is successful at no credit of what the leader does. But sometimes it can be negative. You may experience one follower who idealizes a leader on one day, and that leader does something out of the blue, and that positive admiration for the leader becomes negative with no apparent or logical reason. So it is very important to really understand the dynamics between leaders and followers as we put the emphasis of what a leader can do to lead effectively. We also have to take into consideration the follower's perspective and provide some credence to it.
Wow. Both of you guys said revolves around transparency. And what I'm very interested to know is, how do you define transparency as a trait of an individual, whether they're a leader or a follower? If it matters, great. If it doesn't matter, that's okay too. This concept, what is transparency?
I guess I'll start out with answering. In the simplest terms, it's putting your cards out on the table. Too many times leaders operate with a kind of a need to know basis. And I personally don't agree with that mindset. I think that everybody the more involved you can make them in the process, the more buy-in you're going to get, the better cohesiveness you're going to have as a team. You know, there's a saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I really believe that. I believe in, 5 minds are greater than one. And I try to encourage leaders to not be afraid to keep the dialogue open, challenge your people every day to kind of challenge the status quo. What can you be doing differently? What can you be doing bigger, better, smarter, faster, and improve each and every day? And the feedback that you'll get from that experience or that environment that you create will pay you back tenfold. But unfortunately, what you generally get instead is a very closed organization with closed leadership, with meetings behind closed doors, and the employees are going in one direction. Meanwhile, the company is supposed to be moving in another direction. And what you end up with is, very little to no growth, little to no improvements, whether it be technology, whether it be product improvements, because everybody's kind of marching to their own drum, so to speak. So I think if you keep that dialogue open and really encourage people to come to you, I think it's important to lay down some rules. Not every suggestion is going to, immediately be added to the agenda for the organization, but to, encourage them, thank them for any suggestions that they have, and coming forward, because that takes a lot of courage on their part. What you will get from it in the long run will be far more than what a lot of businesses are seeing nowadays, which is, where 1 or 2 people are making the decisions, and meanwhile, everybody else is kind of left out in the cold. Probably with I think you'd find some pretty good feedback and suggestions, but they really just don't feel like their input is welcome. So now all of a sudden it becomes this 9-to-5 time clock punching job where they're not engaged. They're there to do the minimum, and that's really all you get from them. It's really, unfortunately, it's happening to a lot of companies lately, it seems like.
It is a common trap, that closed door, closed information. Thank you for sharing all of that. Jimmy, what would you say about transparency?
Transparency for me would be 2 words: authenticity and vulnerability. Being transparent is for the people who follow you to know what they will expect at any certain or for any type of scenarios or situation. And for me, that calls being authentic. It is, I'm going to give you a perfect example. During our annual conference, we try to set up something for our attendees called Open Space Technology. And things were not going very well because of technology issues. One thing that we did, we let everybody know what was going on. We apologized to them, said the technology was not working. This is the plan that we have in place so that we can remediate the problem. We go to an application version rather than having a video feed for the open space technology. I have discovered whenever I am open to the people in my team, they know what I stand for, they know who I am, and I get to that level by understanding my life story, by understanding who I am, and also by accepting myself as I am for who I am. In other words, I have certain maxims that I live by, that the team is aware of those. Therefore, if I would tell somebody we need to be on time, or we need to tell the truth, or we need to do this, we need to do that, I also live by those values. And whenever I come up short, I ask the team to hold me accountable so that I am as vulnerable to them so they can say I'm not hiding anything. And this comes also with our plan. This comes with our strategy. And in many organizations, if we were to ask them, do you have a vision? Or as I stated earlier, you need a vision to really get people excited. If we were to ask those leaders, do you have a vision? Most of them may raise their hand. If we were to ask them how many people in their company are aware of that vision, I'm not sure all of them would be able to raise their hand. So transparency for me is to walk the talk constantly, being authentic with your team, and also being vulnerable. And whatever is happening in the boardroom, you let the people know what you're doing. Because it's by them knowing they can think strategically to really help you get where you want to be. By holding it to yourself or by holding it at the C-suite with the executives, the message may not come down. And I will tell you this, which I've experienced. When a leader has a vision, you have to do your best to make sure that the people know that vision. If you do not, your vision may either get diluted or polluted. So being transparent is to not only you state the vision, but you also inspect what you expect constantly, that your direct reports are funneling down the information. When the company messed up, to have the courage to stand and be vulnerable, to state the mistakes, and let everybody involved. Because if you do not do that, you will find yourself isolated. And there is no such way for a leader to be productive and effective leading without people behind you. You're just out there for a walk, you're not leading.
So taking your answers and digging in a little bit more, we know there are boss-employee relationships. We know that there are manager and non-manager relationships. We know there are people who have different jobs that are either facing internal or external when we're looking at our organizations. So I'm very interested to know, we've got this concept of course I'm the leader because I'm the boss, or I'm the CEO, or I'm your manager, so you will do this, or this is how it will be, right? And granted, I'm doing that on purpose. So roll with me here. Because I do believe in organizations where there is a hierarchy, there is still a misunderstanding that just because we are a manager, we're automatically leader. Well, yeah. And what happens if our leaders can't lead, or we disagree with them fundamentally, or they're not transparent and we've got to do our own thing and we have to stand up for ourselves, and vice versa? If we're looking at our teams going, why doesn't anybody understand me? How can I figure out what to do differently because I don't have buy-in? What would you guys say to that?
I think the whole "because I'm the boss" is such an outdated, and unfortunately it's still very, very prevalent.
Yeah.
But that is such an outdated mentality. I've been part of teams where we have just gotten great feedback from people, not even with experience from within the current industry, but they're drawing from experiences that they've had in their past from other industries and have come up with terrific ways to solve problems for the organization. And it would be very easy for somebody to dismiss, oh, they've only been with the company for a year or two, and they're not, their background's in a completely different industry. It's very easy to be dismissive and just not value their input. And I'll just give you an example. I mean, one service company I worked with was looking at they've been told, cut ties with one of the divisions of the company because it was just weighing them down. They had one part of the company was very, very successful, but the other part was just kind of looked at as an anchor. And the reality was, when I started talking to people from the front line, which were part-time employees, all the way up through the managerial staff, and started getting some input, it became very, very obvious that this could be fixed. This is very fixable, but nobody been listening to these people. And the amount of frustration that I felt in talking to these people, the signs were there for years of people that, were just frustrated and they had gone to, their manager with these items, but they just didn't want to listen to them, or they didn't value that feedback. And within about 3 or 4 years, that division of that company was making just as much money as the one that was seen as the profitable one, the one that was doing well. And it was an amazing transformation. And it was really because we listened to the frontline people all the way up throughout the company and made changes based off of their feedback. And then each year we went back and we reviewed and sat down with everybody again and said, okay, now what? Where's our problems now? Where can we improve? Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses? And we continued to grow that department. And as I said, it was 3 or 4 years. It was a very quick transformation. And the reality is it was now also bringing in income for the other department, because it turns out that they're really dependent on each other. When they got a client for one side of the business, that client was also ordering services from the other side of the business. And there was tremendous growth that they experienced over the next 5 to 6 years. They opened additional markets. You are missing an opportunity if, I don't care if they're an hourly employee and they're 30 days on the job, you're missing an opportunity if you're not listening to your people. Is it all going to be valuable? Probably not. But there are things that you can learn, and it's worth just hearing them out and letting them draw from their experiences, because everybody's got different experiences, whether it's with your organization or other organizations. You'd be surprised at what some people will come up with. And as far as buy-in, doing these types of, I don't want to call it an experiment, but these types of discussions and involving them in the process, you will naturally get that buy-in. If they feel that, hey, I know why we're doing this, or I know why there's this rule change or this procedure change, because I sat in on the discussion. I know why it happened, how it happened. I gave feedback. You will get buy-in much quicker than any other method that you could possibly do. If you're going to be that boss where it's because I'm the boss and I said so, good luck getting buy-in. You're going to stunt the growth of the organization as a result, because you're not going to get everybody pulling in the same direction. In fact, you're going to have people pulling in opposite directions because they're not going to want to go along with these directives that are constantly being handed down to them. Even if they're good directives, you're not involving them in the thinking behind them. You're not involving them in the process, and you're missing out on a tremendous opportunity.
You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and today we are talking about leaders who create productive teams. Okay, the conversation so far has been great, and I want to keep going from where we left off. So, Jimmy, let's take a slight turn and talk about this role of follower and leader, and the fact that followers have their own identity and that we do forget that. So, can I be a leader, an effective leader, maybe in a leading role in an organization and maybe not? Yet, if I'm a leader and in a leadership role, can I sometimes be a follower? How would that work?
Yes, 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 and yes. So this is such an important question. It's very important to me. And here's why. The question is really twofold the way I'm thinking about it. As a leader, we are followers. And first, you have to lead this thinking as a leader. You lead with the vision. And also you have to lead the team. So there is this two hat that oftentimes you will have to wear. But we stated earlier that followers have their own identity. Eliyahu Goddard make the statement, tell me how you measure me, I will tell you how I will behave. If you measure me in an illogical way, do not complain about my illogical behavior. And that's essential for all of us. My main thing when it comes to leadership, always tell people, if you will always have people on your side if you just let them know where you stand. You will have your moment to lead. Oftentimes what we discover, we find people that the skills and their gifts get them in position of leadership, but mentally speaking, they are not there. So it's one way to state that I can do this so effectively, now they put me in a leadership position, but yet I do not understand how to lead people. I don't even understand why I am where I'm at. So the question then is, how do you lead your team? This is an area, as mentioned earlier, that leaders seem to take for granted, because this is not just about showing up and lead. You have to realize that other people will depend on you. This is where your leadership style, your character, your value, your essence will be exposed for everybody to see. And as leaders and also as a follower, no one wants to be treated like a faceless cog in a machine. We all want to be known as individuals. So we oftentimes, as I stated earlier, the power of transference, the way we are treated as a follower, we tend to treat other followers like that, which is oftentimes why I personally have what I call emotional anchors, where I said to myself so I can catch myself in those behaviors to know, because a leader treats me this way, I should be self-aware, knowing that is not a behavior that I want to adopt, and I'm not going to treat other people like that. I want to treat people as individuals by respecting them and by helping them in their leadership growth the way they want that to happen, because we're all different. The other thing I want to highlight, it has to do staying connected. One thing I often do, even with my project team, and I also had great success with that with the PMI Portland chapter, is to sign what I call a covenant. In other words, before we start, we say, okay, we are a team of people with different backgrounds, different culture. How do we want to treat each other? This is an easy question to ask. The second question is, if one of us do not abide by what we say, what should we do? And that's often the question that's not answered. I always go to this exercise because it brings all of us on the same page and hold every single one of us accountable. Now, we talked earlier about the top-down command control model. One thing that I was able to implement successfully with the PMI Portland board was the top-down command control model is effective. It is effective in setting up the vision for the organization. As a leader, the leader has to set the board straight and say, okay, the organization, this is where we are going, because you ought to be passionate of that vision so that you can lead people. Once you set up that vision, you have now to revert back to that leadership model and empower your team to execute that vision, that strategy. And that will take a different leadership model that is more as a servant leadership model and not the top-down command and control. Now, the weakness in that model oftentimes is the leader is constantly feeding the team, supporting the team, but the leader is not getting much back. One other model that we can do is, why don't, after I set up the vision, after I let my my direct reports know I am behind them, supporting them 100%. Now we have to go to another model where we build relationships. This is no longer Jimmy is telling you what to do. This is you telling me the best way to get it done. This is another board member telling me this is the way we should do it. Now we have built a relationship. It is no longer top-down control. It is no longer me supporting everybody to get things done. We all in there together. Now, from a leader perspective, as a leader also should be followers. You should find, I believe it was mentioned earlier, you should put yourself in areas so that you can learn. You should have people in your circle that you can follow that will give you additional information for your knowledge bank. I call that gleaning up. You glean up from other people, which is one of the reasons I personally go. Not only we have our leadership conference in Portland, but I make it a priority to go to at least 3 leadership conferences in a year just so that I can learn from other people. Because once you start feeding others, you may find yourself emotionally tired, emotionally hungry because you're not feeding yourself as well. And cleaning up it's not a way for you to compare yourself with others. It is a way for you to humble yourself to learn from other people. Because nobody will take the time and spend time sharing with you if they feel like you're competing with them. So it is a way to step back and say, here, I'm following somebody else. I'm getting some mentors. I'm getting some sponsors to really help me in my leadership quest.
Okay, seriously, don't you guys have a week?
Sure.
I'm like, I know, we could just keep going and going and going. And the thing is, our time has sped by. And so I'm going to ask you one final question, and this is going to be tough. It's going to be tough because you have such great information. You are sharing useful thoughts that we can apply and think about as a leader, as a follower, and then put ourselves in the shoes and work on some empathy towards what do my followers, just because of whatever reason, what's their relationship to me? And the reason I'm setting it up like that is because part of the question was traits, right? The beginning, the dialogue that we were starting to have, what traits does a leader bring? And I want you to each pick one trait and tell me why that one trait is the trait to be a bold leader today. And I'll give you a minute to think about that, because I do want to go back to the fact that we have so much information here. And this particular program that we're doing, I can see has a reflective quality to it where everybody listening to this show, save this one and come back to it, because we can evaluate ourselves. We can set our ego aside. Maybe we can set our ego aside, and maybe we can look at this from the, where is our weakness? What can we do to show empathy, to encourage dialogue, to come back to that concept of transparency, so that there is a communication not only up and down within an organization, but side to side, where we're able to embrace each other and encourage that self journey that every single one of us must go on. And by the way, we already are on. All right. So I want to know, what is the one trait it takes to be bold as a leader today? And your reason for picking it?
I'm going to probably go with work ethic, because I think it hits on many things. It's very easy. Fantastic discussion today, and you brought some great other people. And it sounds easy, and I think sometimes I make it seem easy as well. I mean, getting input from all of your employees. As Jimmy mentioned, it's important to continue your own education. Not to mention many of us are putting in 50, 60 plus hours a week. It's very difficult to do all the things that are necessary to do. It's easy to just kind of lay them out in a discussion like this, but to actually execute, it's hard work. You have to really push yourself in your learning, which a lot of your followers, obviously, you can check that off the list because they're broadening their horizons by listening to your discussions, but also to take the feedback that everybody's giving them, to do a top to bottom thorough analysis of the business and get feedback from your frontline people all the way up. And it's tough because it does open yourself up to some criticism. Unfortunately, sometimes there's going to be things that we do as leaders that, we're making mistakes and we're going to get called out on it, hopefully nicely. But, you're going to learn some things that maybe you did wrong. I think it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of dedication. It is certainly far easier to say because I'm the boss and I said so. It takes far less energy and time and effort. But to really be a successful organization, you really want to be a team. And unfortunately, it takes far more work to be a team and to keep everybody informed in what's going on so that everybody can be rolling in the same direction and propelling that organization forward for years to come. It would be very easy for somebody to wake up one day and kind of kick their feet up and go, well, maybe this is good enough. But with a strong work ethic, I think most leaders will continue to have that drive to push the organization forward, to get up every day and embrace new challenges, new discussions, new feedback, to say, you know what, I'm going to listen to some podcasts today to further my own education. So I think work ethic above all is one of the most important things that leaders can do, because it's not easy. It sounds easy in discussions like this, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication.
#truth. Yeah. All right. Okay, Jimmy, what about you?
That's a tough question. There are so many quotes that come to mind as I'm thinking about this. I mentioned earlier the intersection, the common denominator between leaders and followers really is likability. And for me, that fuels what I call the authenticity. When you are authentic, most likely you will have people follow you and trust you, because you're not worried about putting up a mask when you face tough challenges, when you face different situations. The same person you are in the boardroom is the same person you are in front of the stakeholders, the same person you are with the team. I feel leadership really has such a high responsibility. I was working on the project, and sometimes I feel so humble with my team members, the sacrifices that they make to get us through a project, to get us through some crisis. Most people will not do that if they don't have high respect for the leaders. And this is why leaders have to be conscious of the followers as well, and not just treat them and take them for granted. Understand that followers they're not passive, they are active. Them following you is an active step. It's not because of who you are per se. It is them making the decision to follow you. And usually your authenticity fuels that for them to come to like you. This reminds me of the law of attraction by John Maxwell. You will find out that people who follow you somehow, somewhere have some common ground in several key areas, whether it is attitude, generation, background, values, life experiences, and also your leadership ability. I will tell you this, I am still on the quest of leadership to grow my leadership. I see leadership being really a marathon instead of a sprint. I have so much more to learn. I have so much more to appreciate about people who follow me. I have so much more to be thankful for me to be in situations, to have opportunities to lead, to have a vision, to be able to get people excited to really get that vision through. My words of wisdom, if there's such to leaders, whether they are CEOs or whether they're upcoming leaders straight from high school or whether they're the intern, is really getting to know who you are. Because when things are hard, you're going to have to make tough decisions. They're not going to be popular. By being authentic, knowing who you are is what is going to carry you through. By having your vision in front of you, and I can tell you this, leading a nonprofit organization, your vision is what is going to give you the strength that you need to get things done. So for me, authenticity is at the core, is the foundation to get a leader to display certain behaviors or certain traits that will get followers to like the leader and to follow the leader willingly, not because they have to.
Hashtag truth. This conversation will go on, and it will go on with the help of you. What brings leaders their first follower, and what makes that first connection so important? I think the key here is connection. And the key here comes back to, how do we look at things? How many perspectives do we have? What are we bringing to the table? I mean, we heard about the traits overall that are important for that relationship within an organization. And we heard about how do we show up as leaders. And we heard about how to show up as followers. Because in an organization, not everybody can lead. Yet, with zero leaders, nothing will happen. And so it's a very interesting dynamic where we take into account roles, responsibilities. We also take into account the way that we think and that we feel and what our strengths are and the strengths of the people that we surround ourselves with and choose to be with and get to work with. You can find all of the program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P93. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 93. You can also search leaders who create productive teams. Subscribe, rate our program. Let us know what you think. I'm very curious what the trait is that you believe a leader must have to lead effectively today. Share it in the comments on your preferred listening platform like iTunes or iHeartRadio or Stitcher. Come to the website, find the platform you already listen to, and check the box to have all of our future programs delivered right to your queue. It's through your experiences and the beliefs that you have and the integrity and credibility that you're bringing to every action that you take that defines what it means to be a leader today. In fact, it is incredibly bold to think about problem solving, to decide on solutions, and to make decisions. I want to know, what do you do as a leader to create a productive team?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.